So this week's lesson is lesson 6 and our last lesson for the program, and it's les animaux, or animals. So right off the bat, when you walk into the classroom, you should ask the teacher whether it would be okay if she got clearance, or whether you could get permission to go outside in the hallway or outside to do one of the activities we're going to do later on in the lesson. But first off, you're going to introduce the animals and the vocabulary. So you have stuffed animals in the bag, and you can bring some from home because we're limited with animals. So if you have some great animals, stuffed animals you can bring in, that would be great. So you're going to reveal each animal from your materials bag and say the name, French name out loud, such as lion. And if you want to spice it up, you can even ask a volunteer and say, what is qu'est-ce que c'est, or what is this? And if they say the animal's name, you could throw it to them and they can catch it because kids are very tactile. And if so you'll do this several times until your group feels as though they have a strong grasp of the vocabulary. And then after you've repeated the vocabulary several times and maybe done a few interpretations of learning the vocabulary, such as asking for volunteers, you can move on to the team animal race. So the team animal race consists of the student teachers, putting animals and placing them either outside in the hallway or outside of the school, and placing them kind of scattered across. So if this is limited space, but if I were going to do that, so they're all scattered across the surface, and you'll have teams of either 2, 3, depending on the area. So maybe the hallway you only have 2 or 3, and outside you can have 4 or 5, and you'll have straight lines of teams, and the first person in each line will be versing the first person in the next line. And so you'll say an animal aloud, such as the lion, and so each child tries to get to the lion as quickly as possible. So if I were first in line and there was someone next to me and someone said, the student teacher said lion, I would run and try to get lion and hold it up in the air above my head, like so. So you can repeat this several times and use as many stuffed animals as you like, so that the students learn the vocabulary.
So again, it's just they're lined up and they go, the first in line race against each other to get to the animal that's named, hold it up, their team gets a point. So somebody should be keeping, one of the student teachers keep track of the points. Kids love to make team names. You can give them a minute to create team names. And then that group who just raced, they go to the end of their lines,
Right.
and then the next ones at the front of the line, they'll race with another animal name, but they don't get to take the animals with them. They keep them scattered on the floor.
And then also, while you're playing this game, it's because some students might have inappropriate footwear on, or physical impairments. You might have to ask the teacher first who can go outside and run and be fit or physical, with this activity. Otherwise, it might not be worth it if too many students are not included. And also, since this is an activity that involves running, you might want to set some ground rules. Kids can they can kick, shove, and you might want to say, if that occurs, then we'll have to terminate the game and move on to our next activity. So this is a privilege, and those ground rules should be set before the game even starts. So once you get back inside, or even if you want to stay outside, you can do so. And the next activity is telephone. So telephone is a game that most people are aware of, but it's a little bit different. So the student teacher will stand up in front of the class, and there will be 2 rows, and animals will be scattered around in either on a table or...
No, they'll be at the opposite end of the row.
So they'll be, the opposite end of the row. So students are lined up, and the last student in each line will come up to the student teacher, and the student teacher will whisper an animal name, such as lion, and so no one else hears about these 2 students, and so they rush back to their team, and they whisper the lion to the next one, whispers it to the next one, whispers it to the next one, and once the word or vocabulary word is whispered to the first person in line, that person runs and tries to get the lion, which is at the opposite end of the room. And so you can repeat this, but some students might be talking rather than whispering, so you have to set the guidelines that if the teacher can hear it, or if it's not a whisper, it ruins the fun out of the game, because then all of a sudden the first person in line hears the vocabulary word, and it kind of detracts from the actual telephone point. So if you repeat that several times, that kind of reinforces the vocabulary, and students should cup their hands over the person's ear that they're whispering to so that no one else can hear. And next, if the teacher says no, we cannot go outside, the next activity is a fill-in activity for those who could not go outside or in the hallway to do the relay race. And it's Les Animaux, which is a drawing activity, and there's vocabulary words under each box, such as une vache, un lapin, un serpent, pain, whatever. And some of these words are not words that you learn from stuffed animals, like le lion or le cochon. Maybe you haven't seen un chien, which is dog, so you're going to have to reinforce that vocabulary by acting it out. So, for example,
woof woof,
woof woof, or maybe even like make little gestures, or however you want to present it that's dynamic and animate. So the students will just do their own interpretation. So une vache, they can draw a little cow or whatever that kind of shows their knowledge of the vocabulary. And that's again, this is only if you're unable to do the animal relay race, just so you have enough stuff to fit into your lesson. So the last activity is a cultural activity that's called Naïf Art, and so each student gets 1 or 2 sheets.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
We really want everyone to do this art activity this week, so please make sure you're leaving time for it, at least 15-20 minutes to introduce and get the kids started on it. We really want to include the culture piece.
And one of the reasons why we want to include the cultural piece is that at the end of this cultural activity, the student teachers can collect the art so we can display it at International Night at Westchester High School. So it would be great if you have enough time for the students to complete their artwork so we have something to present. So Naïf Art is unschooled art, which involves everyday activity or everyday life shown, but it's native art, so it's not very professional, but it encompasses like dynamic colors and straight lines. So it's not very sophisticated, but it is. There is francophone naïf art, and if you have a projector or something electronic, you can show pictures of it, just go on Google Images, and if you don't, just tell them to draw kind of their interpretation of a realistic life scene. And you can see on the lesson plan you have 2 examples of naïf art, and so students can color this, just apply them computer paper, and after they're done coloring, after the 15 to 20 minutes, you can collect the piece of paper, which we will then display at the international dinner.
And they may not finish in that time. Please coordinate with your classroom teacher, ask her to encourage them to finish and collect them so that I'll get them from her at a later date. And remind students that they draw something and they make it as colorful as possible. So you might want to ask them something like, what was the best part of spring break? What was the happiest memory of spring break? Or what do you do around your house that is the most fun? Or what do you do in Westerly? Kind of regular, everyday part of their lives that's fun for them, happy kind of. It's meant to be happy pictures. And so some kid might be football crazy and he'll draw a picture of himself kicking a football. So it's meant to be like that. And the student teachers, if you guys take the time to print out a colorful image of Naïf Art, Google Images, and something that you like, and share that with the class and explain to them why you liked it, or even go the extra step and reflect on your own life and draw your own interpretation, that would be very good to share.
Yeah, and you can also allow the students to share their artwork with their classmates, so that'll give them another piece of the motivation to complete their work and do as best to the best of their abilities. And after that cultural activity, you should just have a few minutes left so they can keep coloring. And that really concludes our lesson 6 and our last lesson of the French program.
Yeah, thank you all for participating, and do say your goodbyes to the groups, to your classes, and let them know that you won't be back next week. But they can always email you, and maybe you'll do it next year. Merci, merci Clara.